wasn't
Welcome
sure if I
back.
pulled the
Wow.
trigger a little too early.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I couldn't get my video to work before.
LG, how's your furniture making class?
Say that again.
How's your furniture making class?
It is going really well. Glass blowing class. There's a lot of things going on right now.
Yeah, I know, man. Like I'm so jealous. You should tell everybody kind of what you're up to.
Much. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it that this is awesome.
What is awesome? Tell everybody. I think everybody knows that.
I took a break from, or at least I quit, and I decided not to be responsible to anybody else except my wife for a few months. And in the meantime, I decided I'm gonna just work on crafts and skills. So I'm painting literally and sketching every day. And then I have an internship that I'm starting, not an internship, apprenticeship with a furniture maker, a painter, and just an ability to find deep focus and concentration without living in 15-30 minute increments the whole life.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much for everybody to be here, and thanks again for all the support. First of all, the book is out. It launched 2 days ago, and hopefully most people got it. But I just am, so deeply grateful for so many people. It's been quite the long journey. I remember, Balaji, I remember meeting you remember we had that lunch at the Charles.
Yeah, Adam is also here. Adam, you and I met together.
Yeah, exactly. You were there too, and it was at the Crowd Academy, right? That this whole thing happened, and Steve Rader and Diane Finkhausen, and that's where the whole nexus of this thing happened, right? Just kind of, and then Kareem and Jin not wanting to do any of the commercial work, and so grateful for those early conversations, and also really grateful for all the really amazing support that Harvard Business Review has given us. It's been a little overwhelming. The one thing that I'm just, to report on kind of how it's going, they, look at sales figures for the first year, and they kind of have a number that's typical for sales, and they have put they expect for their sales goals to be triple kind of their average book, and so there's going to be a lot of pressure on me. One of the things I've noticed is that for my other books, I've written 5 of the books, but for some reason those books were always about like finishing the book, intellectual. Oh, actually, that's a great question, Mark. I don't know what Jin's been. I think he's traveling today. Unfortunately, he's deep working for Rob McGuire at Altruistic, and I'm not exactly sure what he's doing today, but I tried to invite him and he couldn't make it. So, but anyway, just kind of that great support from Harvard Business Review. It's an amazing machine, and really, really appreciate all the hand holding. And I think, as many of you were a little, later to join, it was a really, a longer process than I'm used to.
On right now.
Oh, somebody there? Oh, no. A lot longer process than I'm used to. And I was describing earlier we had to do a big kind of, I don't know, 8 months academic review. And so having, Steve Rader and John Healy as a part of the review team, kind of, their positive comments helped get it over the line. So really grateful for you guys. And also, really grateful for Barry. Barry, thanks so much. You've been like taking all this kind of wacky ideas that, I've been having for a long, long time, 25 years, and then trying to make them work. Kind of feel like the guy in the workshop that has all these fantastical ideas of, bicycles with square wheels and shit like that. And it never, they don't really go together. So, your really hard work and knowledge and deep commitment to the movement has been awe-inspiring. So
well, thanks, John. It's great. It feels like we've now got the instruction manual for the industry. So now things can really start to scale.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And I know, Barry, you just missed that call, but I was on with Richard Dawson or Richard Lawson from
Richard Lawson,
yeah, from Accenture, and it's like we are kind of where we've been, right? It's like his explanation of their program called SURF is like, we've got it dialed, but we can't figure out the bureaucratic side of things, right? They're getting some success in the advertising agency side of things from Droga and those guys, but it's still, that's the question in front of us, right? So I think in the context, this book is a little bit different than the other books, in that I think that the publishing of the book is the starting line and not the finish line here. And my hope is that we all as a community, you know, I mean, it's been really, you know, all of us that have done this together. So, and that's, I'm really deeply grateful for that. But my hope is that the stuff that we've put together collectively in this book becomes the place that we can actually get the common, you know, language and the common process and start going down the road together. Because I think that's been one of the biggest things, right? This is a massive generational shift. And for a lot of folks that are, you know, along in their career, it's an existential threat, right? It's an existential threat to not have teams sitting in your office, to not have teams fully deployed, you know, to wonder what they're really doing on their off hours. Are they really working from home? So it's a real, you know, it's a real change. And my hope is, you know, that with this common language and common process that we, as Kareem said, you know, and I don't know, Balaji and Adam and Steve, if you guys remember, but, you know, the most profound thing I think that happened in that meeting at Harvard was when Kareem said, yeah, as soon as you guys figure out how to make this really ordinary and boring, it's going to accelerate. So I think, you know, that's been my goal, is to try to create, you know, this into being really ordinary and boring. And hopefully the book's on its way to do that. I mean, one of the things I thought I'd do is just kind of walk through, well, actually, do you want to do intros for new people, Brandon?
Yeah, what we usually do is anybody who's new to the call can raise their hand on the screen or with the Zoom tool, and we'll call on you and you can introduce yourself, say who you are and who you're with, and say a few things and drop your info in the chat. And then we share this out after the call. So is there anybody new on the call that would like to say hello? Yari. Yari, thank you.
Yeah, Yari.
You saved me. You saved me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Finnish name. Hello, everyone. New to the call. Actually, zooming in from Malaga, Spain. Not originally from Spain, though. From Finland. I lead a managing partner for a small boutique management consultancy practice called HKH Management Consulting. We do, you know, traditional management consultancy, but in a boutique style, and through 4 different practice areas globally. So, and of course, open talent is something which is highly interesting for us and naturally for our clients, because we focus on SME side predominantly. So figured I'll join in and you know, start getting hang of things and connecting with people.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Angeline.
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm from Pennsylvania here in the United States. Thank you, Aaron, for the recommendation to join today. Much appreciated. I am a PhD candidate studying the moderating effects of work engagement on the relationship between psychological contracts and knowledge sharing behavior in the freelance economy. Wow. What does that mean in human terms? It means, how do we treat our freelancers like humans instead of transactions? I was the former chief of staff at Top Coder, so really had an opportunity to jump into that space between organizations and freelancers, and really grateful for my time as well as the connections that I've made. So thank you for having me today.
Welcome. Shobana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shobana Gupta. I have the good fortune of working with Steve Rader at NASA. I work in Earth Science Division on open innovation. And by training, I'm a physician scientist, but have been in the crowdsourcing world for the past 8 years. So I'm really excited to be here.
Welcome. Lucas.
Hi, I'm Lucas, based in Berlin right now. I'm in the strategy team working for Malt, a European scale-up. Right now we employ about 600 or 650 people. all across Europe. It's a freelance
Hello.
marketplace mostly focusing on digital talents, creatives, and consultants. And happy to join for the first time and listen in to what all you guys have to say, especially John with your new book. I'm very excited. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lucas. Jeff.
Hi there, I'm Jeff Nugent. I'm in the contingent workforce space, been in it for 30 years, or close to 30 years now. Got to know John recently, and I'm excited to attend my first meeting. My background, I came from biz school, and I'm an entrepreneur. Got into IT staffing, sold that business, got into contingent workforce management, built an MSP, VMS, sold that. My claim to fame more so in the industry of late, as I was one of the original founders of one of the founding companies, People 2.0. We merged 4 companies together in 2018. Got some private equity money, bought about 9, 10 other companies, and sold that in 2021. In my semi-retirement, I could just sit on my hands. I started a company called Independently, and we are working to become the standard compliance operating system for independent contractors and independent contractor vetted in the marketplace, more like a background check that's not any vendor or standards around independent contracting on a global basis. So I'm excited to be here. It's awesome conversation, and congrats on the book, John.
Hey, thanks,
Book
Jeff.
launch.
And make sure people, Jeff, I don't maybe put in the chat that your link to our podcast, because I really enjoyed having the conversation with you. So
Yeah, I just launched today, actually. I think it's Thursday, right? So there you go.
Rodrigo.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm Rodrigo Silva from Uruguay, Latin America. It's a pleasure to meet you all in this community today. Well, I lead Lithium, an IT staffing company. So we mainly focus on recruiting and meeting, all the great talent in Latin America in order to match them with interesting projects and clients, mainly in the US. So it's a pleasure to be here in a community that is completely aligned with the values and many things about the new way of work. So yes, so basically, well, I'm a software engineer in my education. So now, as I said, I lead this team of people that are constantly looking for the best talent and also, matching them with interesting growing opportunities. So this is core for us. Well, very interesting in continue meeting people from the community, and of course bridging the gaps from Latam to other parts of the world. And also my greetings to Karina from Brazil, that we just have an email today, so we are super connected today. Well, thank you very much for the space.
Welcome. Francis.
Great, thank you. Good to see you, good to meet you all. So I also work in the contingent workforce space, similar to Jeff. So I work for Pontoon Solutions, who are part of the Adecco group. And my role is the MSP Services Director here at Pontoon. And I've been doing some work for the past probably year and a half to try and figure out how we can absorb the management of freelancers, freelance platforms, freelance aggregators into the contingent workforce space, how we can bring those together. They seem to have been quite separated or polarized for a period of time. I was introduced to Barry last year, so we've had a couple of calls and some interaction, and I've just tracked Open Assembly for the past few months and thought I'd join the community. So yeah, really happy to hear see all the different experiences, get to know some of you. So yeah, wonderful. Thanks for having me here, and looking forward to being part of the community.
Welcome. Ron.
Hi, everybody. Ron Harpaz calling from San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a technology geek here in Silicon Valley. Strongly believe that the future is independent, and people would want to do what's good for them if they weren't tied down to all kinds of company benefits and visa issues and health requirements, etc. So for the past 6 months, I'm a CEO founder of a startup called Lettuce Financial, like the vegetable lettuce. Our purpose is to help solopreneurs, freelancers, businesses of one take control of their finances, help them with the taxes, make sure that they keep most of what they earn. So we're going to bring everything that technology has to do to the millions of solopreneurs in the US and really help them have a better financial future. Would love to connect with everybody here. This is one of the best so far groups of people who think about the future as an independent place. So I'll drop my information and the company information and would love to connect and learn more. Thank you all.
Last but not least, Layla, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, great job.
Great.
Cappuccino girl over here, apparently. Nice to meet you all. This is a great group. So quickly, organizations, as we're all saying here, are relying more and more on contingent workforce and talent marketplaces and freelancers. We noticed that the process of validating people's abilities and skills is very manual. And so we use AI to not only automate the process, but increase the quality of the validation process so we can connect clients' needs to people and talent more quickly and more effectively. So Team Lift is the name of the AI solution, and I'll share a link in the chat.
Great. John, I think it's all you.
Awesome, thanks. As I was surveying folks, I noticed that Mike Morris is on as well, and I have to do a big shout out. He's one of the real OGs, and Mike, I've so appreciated your leadership in the market since, what was it, 2001 when you were a top coder? I mean, it's just amazing as we reflect on what's happened over this long period of time. So, thanks to everybody on the call. I thought I'd just kind of take some time and reflect on some of the things, maybe take a little bit of a historical journey and then talk about how that came into the, ended up as the book and ended up at Harvard. Some of you people have heard the stories, but I just thought I'd just kind of level set so we're all on the same page. And then, let's talk for a few minutes about, how do we take this forward? Like, how do we use this as a tool to really help the whole marketplace grow? I'd love to just have a really interactive dialogue. So maybe 15 minutes of just on how we got to here, and then let's dive in and have a really collaborative conversation. As many of you know, I had the really great honor to be able to acquire a magazine called Women's Sports and Fitness back in the day in the mid 80s. And, it was at a time when all the magazines that existed, in the sports world, runner's world, bicycling, all the magazines, everybody, the participation was 50-50, but yet, all the magazines featured men, men on the covers, male writers. And so a bunch of folks here in Boulder were really curious. Women's Sports and Fitness came across my desk, and it was up for, it had gone bankrupt, or Time Inc. was trying to sell it in a fire sale. And so I was really intrigued, talked to a lot of folks, and was inspired to acquire that. So I went to Portland and talked to Mark Parker and Tinker Hatfield, who were at the time mid-level guys at Nike. And I said, do you think this thing's going to really happen? This women's sports thing's going to really happen? And, Mark looked at me and said, yeah, I think women are going to do sports. I think it could be kind of a big deal. And so, I put everything on the line, mortgage on the house and everything to make that work. And one of the things that, serendipitously, because I was under, like most entrepreneurs, under a lot of financial stress to try to figure this out. One of the things that Time Inc. had is they had 40 editors and writers in New York. And so the way that it used to work is that, they'd send a writer here to Boulder to interview maybe a Lynn Hill, who's a rock climber. And, the writer might not know a lot about rock climbing. So it wasn't really authentic, right? It wasn't really nuanced as somebody who really knows the subject. And so because I had those economic constraints, I kind of decided to do something at the time that was really unusual. And that was, let's not have the big office in New York with 40 editors and writers, and let's have a couple editors here in Boulder, but let's let the Lynn Hills of the world write their own stories, tell their own passionate things to the other readers. And then let's have the editors just make sure that it's, you know, up to snuff and it's really consistent with the theme of the magazine. And lo and behold, that worked really, really well. It reduced my costs by a substantial amount and gave us this huge runway, gave kind of way more connection to the readers. And, you know, on this 15-year journey, I was able to kind of cobble together another few magazines and sold that company to Condé Nast. And so I was really, really intrigued by that journey, right? Like, wow, there's so much power in the crowd. There's so much power to be utilized. I see San here, and you know, San and I both have been in the ad business for a long time. And one of my frustrations at Women's Sports and Fitness was that I knew agencies were, you know, brands started with a lot of money up front, and by the time they ran an ad in the pages of Women's Sports and Fitness, it was just a trickle. There are all these intermediaries that were extracting an amazing amount of fees, and so, you know, the next part of the journey was starting a company called Radar Communications to take kind of those crowds of early adoptive consumers and put them at the top of the funnel and help brands think about strategy and think about marketing and product innovation. And, you know, that idea of could we tap the cognitive surplus of this massive global crowd to do that? And that worked really amazingly well. You know, we had Intel and HP and Nike and Levi's and a bunch of other global brands that really launched into that. And it was really fun to kind of work with the discovery part of, you know, the marketing funnel where we were out talking to consumers and really bringing insights. And so that was kind of part of the journey in writing a few books on co-creation. Back then, we called all this stuff co-creation, right? It was kind of before Jeff Howe wrote the book called Crowdsourcing in 2006. And as I reflect back, you know, in 2006, when Jeff was writing that book and we were working together on that, it was sort of like this moment, right? It was like the crowdsourcing book's coming out. It's going to tip. We're going to like, this is going to be the way that labor works. And here we are, you know, 18 years later, and we're still having the same conversation. It just shows how hard this kind of stuff is. That kind of led me to merge my company Radar with an ad agency called Crispin Porter Bogusky, and really, really lucky, you know, met a guy named Alex Bogusky, and there were 50 folks on their side and 14 of us when we merged. So, you know, about 65 of us. And we just went on this crazy run because we put the idea of co-creation, working with brands, consumers at the core of our strategy. So we won $3 billion worth of business in 2 years and grew the firm from 55 of us to 1,200 of us, and became creative global agency of the decade. And, you know, one of the problems with that kind of growth is you just can't keep folks employed. I mean, one of the core tenets of Crispin was we can't pay a lot, you know, come to Boulder, do some work. We'll be very liberal on who gets their name on the award-winning advertising, and then jump ship and go triple your salary at a big old school New York firm. And so it was a real problem. And we'd won this account called Brahmo Motorcycles, and we didn't have any labor. We didn't have any creative, you know, teams that could work on it. And so Alex and I looked at it and said, well, why don't we just crowdsource it from a platform called CrowdSpring? And San, I'm sure you remember, right? When we did that, it was a shit show. Like the idea that the creative agency of the decade, you know, being celebrated for its great internal creative talent, was going to crowdsource, you know, a creative campaign for one of its clients really caused an issue. And one of the things I love about Alex is he loved that controversy, right? He was all up for that. But one of the things we found when we dug into the stuff is that every great creative in the you know, country or even in the world were using the platform to get an interview with Crispin at the time. And so Bogusky looked at me and said, holy crap, we can tap into any great mind in the world through a digital platform and work together on a really cool project. Why do we need to hire 1,200 people? That led me to launch, you know, Victors and Spoils. And I know a lot of you guys have heard the Victors and Spoils experience, but again, you know, it was really a paradigm shift for me going, you know, there were three of us, Claudia Batten and Evan Fry and I, sitting in my garage in October of 2009. And we had this idea of a crowdsourced agency or an ad agency based on crowdsourcing principles, but we didn't have any customers, we didn't have any talent. And Stuart Elliott from the New York Times was kind enough to say, hey, if you guys hold off on the launch of the magazine or the launch of the company until I write an article, then, you know, we'll see where that goes. And so in the morning, there were three of us in my garage anticipating the New York Times article. sure enough, the article appeared, and by that night, we had 3,000 people that signed up to work with us. And Dish Network, a big satellite TV supplier, their Ira Barr, who's their CMO, had called and given us their global television campaign media about $110 million. So 12 hours, it was a pretty crazy ride. So, you know, we recognized this power of, you know, this kind of idea of open talent, as we call it today. Like, could we use that and tap into this cognitive surplus? I mean, some of my funnest stories along the way in the VNS journey is that we won the Harley Davidson business, you know, off a tweet, which has likewise really caused some consternation in the industry. But one of the things that I loved about it is the guy that actually did all the deep creative brand stuff was a guy by the name of Whit Hiller from Lexington, Kentucky. And he had been trying to get a job with ad agencies for the last 3 years. He couldn't find any work in the ad business. So he was kind of he was a general manager at a Vespa dealership, but he'd sent hundreds of, you know, resumes off to agencies in New York and LA and London and never gotten response. Yet he had all this knowledge and this power, and he ended up creating the brand campaign for Harley Davidson and really, you know, shook the world, which again, it proved that there's so much great talent out there that, you know, companies just don't take the time to tap into. You know, certainly from the Harley Davidson, when I decided to, you know, take an opportunity with David Jones at Havas, who asked me to come into Havas in Paris to become the Chief Innovation Officer. And we, you know, got a chance to build out some of that technology. David was really looking at you know, open talent as not a solution, but more as a marketing tool to investors and analysts to say, hey, Havas is a part of the future. We're not willing, you know, we're not scared of being, you know, digitally transformed or be put out of business by that. So we, you know, David successfully put together a story with VNS as part of it, and, you know, was able to move the stock price for Havas $1 billion. But, you know, what we found was that, well, David and I and the rest of the C level at Havas really understood, you know, that this is a powerful move. One of the things we created was a thing called Havas Crowd, which was an internal talent marketplace. So if you had a creative director in Boston, say, working for Arnold, which was a big agency at the time, and, you know, you couldn't get all your work done because your hair was on fire, could you use this internal talent marketplace to, you know, take suggestions from a creative director or even a young creative in Istanbul at the Havas Istanbul? We thought it was a brilliant idea. How do we capture the cognitive surplus of 20,000 people across the globe? Unfortunately, the 350 CEOs that ran the local agencies thought it was the dumbest idea ever. They were not going to share their talent. They were going to do whatever they could to keep their talent. You know, they didn't want their talent to, I think there were two operating things. One was the idea that, you know, that the CEOs were usually people that had worked 20 years to be able to work on global businesses from their local markets. And so they weren't going to let some young whippersnapper, you know, be able to jump in and do this amazing, you know, work on, let's say, Peugeot out of Paris right away. So there was kind of some, you know, generational jealousy that went on, right? That was going on. And then also just the ability to quantify the work. I hired a creative director in Istanbul to work on Istanbul work. And even though there's some downtime and cognitive surplus, I don't want them to kind of be able to work for somebody in Boston. So I could see kind of those themes emerge that, you know, we captured in the book. And after Havas, that led me to, you know, hang out with Kareem Lakhani and Mike Tushman and Bharat Anand at Harvard, because they wrote a couple of case studies on me. VNS, Being Born Open, and then Havas, you know, Change Faster is the name of the case study. It's still a very prominent case study 10 years later at Harvard. But that gave me the really unique opportunity to go hang out at the Laboratory for Innovation Science at Harvard. And, you know, obviously Steve and NASA is the reason that Lish, you know, is around, because Jeff Davis from NASA, you know, had a problem. He had a big budget cut, and he went to Kareem to try to figure out how does he keep astronauts alive in space with this budget cut in health and human services, and use crowdsourcing principles. So that, you know, that was another big inspiration along the way. Being at the lab created a lot of intellectual safety for me, and the ability to kind of explore a lot of these things that I've been building companies on, but not really thinking about it from how do I sell talent or what are the intricacies of selling talent. It was more, how do I build businesses with a new operating and cost structure that allows for, you know, profitability and the ability to service customers in a better way. So, as we've emerged, that's kind of the history. And, like I said, the goal of the book is to create a common language and a common process for the future of work. I think, and what we've tried to do here is to really set up a paradigm. And for us, Open Talent really represents the digital transformation of work. It's really, we think about it, and you'll see when you read it, there's really three pillars. There's external talent clouds, internal talent marketplaces, and open innovation capabilities. And the goal here is to set up something that we call kind of a networked organization. How do we have an organizational structure and a mindset that allows people to think in a new way? One of the things I find curious, and Barry's done such a great job to help me understand this the nuanced part of the labor market. But I think when Barry and I have been working out on the road with customers, I'm always so curious. There's like the outsourcing side of things, and then there's the staffing side of things, and then there's the HR side of things. And a lot of times, especially since outsourcing goes through procurement and HR is HR, that a lot of people don't even know everybody they work with. There's this kind of inconsistency inside large companies, which was been a really interesting learning. So the goal here, in my mind, is to create at least the start of a conversation with the book that allows for the digital transformation of talent writ large. I think what we've seen in HR tech is we've seen a lot of really great technology be built, but really be built to solve the short-term friction of an analog mindset and an analog culture. And that's all well and good, but I think what Open Talent represents, and my aspiration is that it represents the digital transformation of talent writ large. And again, the goal of the book is really to just start this conversation. I'm sure that, as any start of a conversation, it's going to evolve in a lot bigger way with people that are really a lot smarter than me that can take this work a lot deeper. One of the things that we've thought a lot about is like, what's the difference between open talent and the open talent economy, the gig economy? And we see, open talent is the digital transformation, as I said, through a globally distributed workforce accessible to companies on demand via digital connections and platforms. And we see it very much as different than the gig economy, which is really B2C, and in a paradigm where, a platform or an algorithm tells a worker where to go and what to do for work. I need to pick up, Joe Smith at the airport at this time, and be paid kind of on an algorithm. We really want to be a tool for all of open talent platforms and professionals to use it to grow their business. That's the goal of the book, right? How do we really grow this? How do we really grow this kind of open talent economy? So, the 6 insights that I'll share quickly that you'll see in the book are, developing this network mindset, kind of developing this networked culture, and then building a center of excellence. And that's really a lot of the great work that Barry's been doing out there. It's like, man, it's been really fun to watch Barry implement that and in the team, that he's put together at OA to figure out what that means, how it works, how does we take care of the compliance and security and all those kinds of really nuanced things that are kind of been way above my pay grade. And then, we really think about like, what are the 3 things to build that I mentioned earlier? Like, how do we build external talent clouds? What does it mean to build open innovation capabilities? And then how do we build an internal talent marketplaces? My sense is that, the goal here is, and one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is that I think we're moving from a world of hiring roles to think about tasks and to get outcomes done, right? Like if you think about, the story that I've been telling a lot lately is like, if you were tasked to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you knew that AI was going to be really important in the future, there were really 2 pathways to solve that, right? The outcome could be a digital strategy or an AI strategy. So the traditional way of going out and talking to your CHRO and saying, I need an SVP of AI, you think maybe 6 to 8 months to hire that person. And then she would need to hire the team, right? Which would take another 4 to 5 months. And then it would take 3 months for them to work together and do a strategy. And my sense is that no matter how good that strategy would be, 18 months, it would be totally irrelevant. I think the more modern way to think is to actually say, what tasks need to be done and what skills do we need? How do we go out to open platforms and bring together, let's say, the 10 best people to a location, even to do it digitally, and create over a couple of days, create the 100 tasks that need to be done to do a AI strategy, and then put together those folks with some internal folks to get that strategy done in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, kind of month to month and a half. Now that seems radical, and I'm sure it's maybe 85% as good as the strategy that would take 18 months to do. But in a place like AI right now, you're dead if you take 18 months to do a strategy. And so better to kind of have a good strategy and not be, not let great be the enemy of good. So those are the kind of things we've been thinking about in the book. And my hope is, and my dream is that, this book is, again, just a humble start of a strategy and a conversation that all you guys on the call that are so much smarter than me can actually take and break and squeeze out and figure out, what these categories are. How do we do it better? Because I think we've got a large task in front of us, right? I think that we're just at the start of this revolutionary change, and this is a generational change. And so, of course, it scares the hell out of most, executives that have been working in this way of traditional workforce for a long, long time. So we have to be, we have to create tools that are ordinary and boring, and we have to have a lot of empathy and humility around, how do we help those folks get to the future? But that, to me, is the task at hand. How do we work together to make this happen? So I'd throw it out to you guys, and there's so many super smart folks on the call. Like, how do we do that? I'm gonna actually call on some people just to start the conversation. But John Healy, in your wisdom, I've spent a lot of time with you, man, and I just love the fact that the kind of the labor market so well, and you see the future. You're one of the few folks that actually is, I would call you very ambidextrous, right? Like understanding both sides of the coin, probably better than anybody in the world. Like how do we take the things that we've built and as we've articulated in the book and really together as a global industry push this forward?
Yeah, John, I come back to some of the early conversations that we had when this group was first forming around standards. And I think that there's a really important element there of kind of coming back to things. I think you've seen that as people have tried to aggregate. Barry, you're certainly seeing it with some of the companies that are out there right now trying to do it. And with each of the platforms operating differently and using different language in how they approach things, the inconsistency leads to inconsistency in the buying community. And so we need to see, Steve King and I had an exchange earlier this week about how unions are forming more and more in the independent marketplace, yet the independent worker is fiercely independent and therefore does not want to be aggregated. And there's this element of where do we come together for the growth of the whole as opposed to the fight of the individual. And I think that's where our biggest struggle is the willingness to come together and agree on some standards and say this is where it's going to work better for us collectively, and then go compete on the battlefield. I'm all for competing and working our way through that. But I think that there are some real elements where we need to come together and align. And to me, that's the opportunity that this community has in front of itself.
Yeah, I love that, John. One of the things was it in our conversation, John, that we talked about the W3 or the standard setting body for Wi-Fi way back in the day.
Yeah.
Did you bring that story to me? Because I thought that was such a great story about, the kind of the wildness of that marketplace before there were standards, and then setting the kind of global standards on and getting people to buy into those, right? The standards for Wi-Fi. But I think there's lots of examples, whether it's cloud computing or other areas, when industries get together and start using common language and common process, that there's this acceleration. And my hope is, this is a great industry, but there's 1,000 platforms and there's lots of different people using different ways to look at it. And obviously we're all trying to grow. So, getting that strategic edge of finding the right brand and the right way and the right process to do that, but bringing us together in a way to make sure that we've got some semblance of consistency is super important. I'm going to call on
I just have to shout out to Aaron in it. We have to create a little mitosis here and truly get these communities becoming self-serving and self-cultivating.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. Balaji, I'm gonna call on you because you play such a big role in the book, and if it wasn't for you and your graciousness and Deloitte's graciousness of letting Mike Tushman and I document your journey, it just wouldn't, the book wouldn't be what it is. So I really appreciate that. But, you know, our conversations have been so awesome as far as your personal journey of not only being kind of the innovator inside the large organization, as Mike Tushman called it, the corporate explorer. You become quite the rock star there. But, you know, also like, how do we go forward here? I mean, what are the keys to doing that?
Yeah, and thank you, John. And interestingly, Adam is also on the call, and you know, he and I were the naive people that chose to pick up this topic and say, maybe there's something to do here. There's something interesting and innovative that we can actually do, and you know, and it's met with very degrees of success, and you know, we failed many times as well. And I think the next phase is two-front. I think one is you know, from a risk perspective, I think standards are key, as John said. But I think the other side, it has to be extremely easy to use. I go back to what Kareem said. It has to become boring. If there's a manual or a highly complicated process for it to be deployed, for people to learn to deploy it, every step in that adds additional burden or additional barriers for change. It's not as though people won't take on the barriers. It's the benefit of those barriers. If that's very high, I will run through walls, because the benefit at the end of it is insane. It just creates a greater need for a bigger business case if the barriers are high. So the entire vendor ecosystem, the companies, the more they focus on ease of use and making it easy from the journey of when a buyer chooses to buy or at least use Open Talent, I think that's the next step. And I think we are probably, I give the sector of Open Talent marketplaces about a 4 on 10 to create that ease of use. That generates scale, that creates, you know, $100 million accounts for each of these for each of these marketplaces. And I think there is ease of use at the individual level. There isn't a lot of ease of use at the organizational level, and I think that's the next solve.
That's great. No, I love those comments. Hey, I'm gonna call on my good buddy Ty Montague. Ty, you and I, again, you know, in the ad biz for a while, and Ty wrote a great book. I mean, maybe Brandon, you can throw it in the chat on storytelling. And one of the world's best kind of brand storytelling guys. And when I was starting Victors and Spoils, you know, Ty was starting Co-Collective, and it was, you know, born out of the same principles, right? How do you work with external folks to kind of really empower, you know, or capture that cognitive surplus? But you've been, you know, on this journey from a long time, and you know, just one other note on Ty. Ty's been mucking around in the tech world for a long time, and you know, tried to start a platform called Doable, which was really fascinating as well. So has kind of earned his stripes on organizational building collaborative systems as well.
Failed hard, I guess, is the other way to put it, right?
Yeah, you got to fail hard.
Yeah. The idea behind Doable, I will resonate with this group. I think is just that companies have you know, lots of internal silos, and the idea was, and lots of people sitting, some people who are busy, and lots of people are sitting twiddling their thumbs, especially in big companies. And so the idea was to create a platform that allowed ideas literally to come from anywhere inside a company. It was an internal innovation software, essentially, and giving employees access to, you know, the problems and challenges that were on the minds of the leadership team, and actually get involved in solving them. That broke. That didn't work at all. We built the software, put it into the world, had clients using it, put products into the world using the software, couldn't get anybody to pay for it. And when we dug into really why that was, it came down to culture. Like, it just broke culture. People didn't like the idea of democratizing access to ideation, especially inside big companies. That ideation is done by a special group of people who have a special, you know, all access pass, and other people are not allowed. So maybe we were early, maybe we were wrong, who knows? But that failed hard. And I would just say, I don't have the golden answer. I think one thing that I've been watching with interest that might shine a pen light on the future for open talent is what's going on in crypto. You know, they've had the same problem for a long time, which is that the user experience, if you're interested in crypto, is just brutal. It's horrible. Like, it's really hard to try to, and it was incredibly hard at first, and then it started to get easier. You know, Coinbase came into the world, that created much wider adoption. You see other platforms now in the world, and now, you know, we're just seeing possibly ETFs, and that is a big tipping point to me, where you're using a tool that everyone, or a wide group of investors are familiar with, to allow access to the crypto world. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to see it, unless the SEC shuts it down and everybody goes home. But I think that's an example of an industry that has a very similar problem that seems to be actually emerging from the darkness a little bit.
Thanks, Ty. Man, I can't even believe we're at time. I guess I dominated too much of the conversation earlier, so apologies for that. I get kind of caught in my own stories sometimes. So, you know, there's a couple people that I wanted to call on, but I think we'll have to do it on another call. Obviously, Steve Rader, I'd love to get your, you know, on the next call, your feelings on this journey you've been on for a long time, and then the OG Mike Morris. You know, really important to kind of get your take on things, as you were there, you know, in 2001 and started Top Coder, and now kind of pivoted from open innovation to open talent, and just maybe some learnings. I mean, the goal, you know, 2024 for me in this group is to get back to our roots, and really, like, how do we now use this book and use the thoughts and really, you know, tear them apart. Let's explode it. Let's figure out what works and what doesn't. And it's going to take all of us to do this, right? We're going to have to figure this out together. We're at this tipping point, and I think we've got so many amazing opportunities for everybody. And like I've said from the beginning, let's create, you know, high tide that floats all boats. But it's going to take a ton of work, and it's going to take us working together and using that common language and common process. And then, you know, like Ty said, you know, how do we share our failures? How do we fail hard and bring those learnings back? So let's continue this conversation over the next few weeks, and really tear things apart and figure out how we can support each other and going forward and making sure that we get to where we want to go. So thanks again for everything. As always, love you guys and really, really appreciate it. The book would never have happened with this amazing community that we've built together. So once again, gracias. Love you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Gracias.
Congratulations.
Obrigado.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, John.